Hello. In these lessons, we're going to be looking at probability. Now, the probability of something happening is the likelihood or chance that it might happen. So it's how likely something is to happen. Probability can be expressed as fractions, decimals, or percentages, or on a probability scale. And we can also describe probabilities using terminology linked to probability. This is something that we'll be looking at over the next few lessons. Now, we have some examples here, and what I'd like us to do is to highlight some of the terminology that we'll be using in a lot of these lessons. Now, it says, the event of tossing a coin has blank possible outcomes. These are. So, if you were to throw a coin up in the air, that in itself is an event. Or if you were to roll dice, that is an event. So if we look at A, the event of tossing a coin has how many possible outcomes? Well, what could you have if you were throwing it up? You could either have a tails, couldn't you? Or heads. And these are outcomes. So there has two possible outcomes, and these are tails, throwing tails, or heads. The event of rolling a fair regular die, now die is dice, has how many possible outcomes? These are. Well, on a dice, we have got the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. It's a cube, it has 6 sides with these numbers on it. So this has 6 possible outcomes, and these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. It's important for you to know some well-known events such as these. Often in probability you may be asked about a standard deck of cards. All of these will come up as we go through. Let's look at describing probabilities. So you can use words such as these below, so the likelihood, to describe how likely something is to happen. So by describing the probability. Now we know already that probability is how likely something is to happen. So if something has a low probability, then it's unlikely to happen. Or if something has a high probability, it is likely to happen. So here we've got these 5 words: impossible, unlikely, even chance, likely, and certain. And these explanations over here match with one of these descriptions. So what I'd like you to do is I want you to write this out in your big books and match these likelihoods to the explanation. So pause the video, give it a go, and then when you're ready to check your answers, press play and I'll be going through it. Make sure you use a pencil to match them up just in case you do make a mistake. Okay, so hopefully there you have tried this. So I'll go down the explanations, then we'll link those to the likelihood, the description. So it has a greater chance of happening than not happening. So that means then it has quite a high probability. So that there would be likely. Something has a greater chance of happening than not happening. It's likely to happen. It has the same chance of happening as not happening. So that means it's an even chance. It's the same chance of happening as not happening. So if we think of the event of tossing a coin, what's the probability that you get a heads? Well, it's going to be even chance because there's 2 outcomes, both have an even chance of happening, so that is then even chance. It has a greater chance of not happening than happening. That would be, I'm not sure what happened there. That would be unlikely. There is no chance it will happen. That is impossible. Okay, it's impossible. There's no chance it will happen. And it will definitely happen is certain. Okay, so they are the descriptions, and then each explanation to go with that terminology. As already mentioned, probabilities can be expressed as fractions, decimals, or percentages. So if the probability of something happening is impossible, we say that the probability is 0. Okay, so 0%, no chance it can happen. If the probability of something happening is certain, we say the probability is 1. So that's like 100%, okay, 100% chance that it will happen. If the probability of something happening is an even chance, we say that the probability is a half, or 0.5, or 50%. Okay, because it's got a 50% chance of that happening. So for example, heads or tails, there's a 50% chance you get heads or then your tails. All the probabilities lie between 0 and 1. Okay, so this is important for you to know, so please make sure that you do write that in. And this information then allows us to express probability on a probability scale. So here we have a probability scale. Probability scales go from 0 to 1. Okay, and it's like a number line. So if we were thinking about the probability of something happening is impossible, impossible gets placed here on the number line because that is 0. Okay, so for example, rolling a 7 on a dice, if we had anything like that, that would be impossible. So that would go here on the probability scale. Something is certain, that is 1. The probability of that is 1. So for example, the sun will rise in the morning. If I had a probability like that, that would be placed here on the probability scale. Getting a tails on a coin, that is even chance, so we would place that here on your probability scale at a half. Okay, because that's even chance. Then anything that is between impossible and even chance then is unlikely to happen. So for example, winning the lottery, okay, is unlikely to happen. It's unlikely that we are going to win the lottery. It's not impossible, or otherwise nobody would do the lottery. However, it's such a small chance that actually, or even on this scale here of unlikely, there are different aspects where we would place an event. So winning the lottery would actually go down here if we were placing that on the probability scale, because it's very unlikely. Okay, and then anything if it's likely to happen, then that would be placed anywhere between a half and 1. Okay, so that is your probability scale. Please write that in. And what we can then do is we'll have these probabilities where we would place them on a probability scale. This is a typical GCSE type question that you may have. So on the probability scale shown below, mark the points A, B, C and D where. So A is the probability that you will celebrate your 200th birthday tomorrow. So this is impossible. Okay, it's impossible that we are going to celebrate our 200th birthday tomorrow. Even if you do live to 200, it's not your 200th birthday tomorrow, so it's impossible that you will celebrate that tomorrow. You have to use a bit of judgment with this now. You know, sometimes you may have a description of a man has 4 heads, and then there tends to be somebody in the class will say, well, you could. No, we've got to think now. We want these marks. Think logically. So B, if you toss a coin, you will get a heads. So it's equally likely that you get a heads as a tails. So that's going to be even chance. So we would place the B here on our probability scale. C, it will rain in Madrid on the 15th of August. It's hot and dry in Madrid in the summer, so it's very unlikely to rain. Okay, so that would go along here. But as we don't have any exact numbers, I'm going to place it there, which is around about a quarter. D, it will rain in London on the 30th of November. It's likely to rain in November in London. Okay, it's quite wet, so D would go there. E, you will have something to drink this week. Yes, that's certain. We are all going to drink something this week as we need it to stay alive. Okay, so that's how you'd answer a question on probability scale. And let's try another example. So with this, we're using all this terminology that we have learnt. So impossible, even chance, certain, unlikely, likely. And we're placing those on a probability scale, knowing that 0 is impossible, 1 is certain, half is even chance, and then your unlikely is anything between 0 and a half, and then your likely is from half to 1. So let's look at A, it will rain in Wales in December. It's very likely that this will happen, so I'm going to place A there. B, a man has 3 heads. Impossible. C, Boxing Day will be on the 26th of December this year. Certain. Boxing Day is always on the 26th of December. D, you roll a fair regular die and get an even number. You may want to write things down by the side of it, and that's what I tend to do in a GCSE. So I may write down the outcomes that you could have when rolling a dice. How many of these are even numbers? 2, 4, 6 are even numbers. So 3 are even numbers, 3 are odd numbers. So that means then that you're equally likely to get an even number as you are to an odd number, so that means then it's even chance. So D would go here. And the next car you see will be pink. It's going to be unlikely. There are many different colours of cars, so that means then that is unlikely. So that is your first lesson on probability. I hope that you enjoyed, and there are a few more lessons where we'll be bringing in actually working out what the probability is and going on to listing outcomes. Well done.